Imagine a man who once ruled almost all of Europe, forced into exile, stripped of power, and left to fade into history. Now picture that same man suddenly returning, marching straight toward Paris with nothing but 1,000 loyal soldiers, and watching entire regiments of the French army switch sides to join him. This wasn't just a comeback. It was the beginning of one of the most dramatic final acts in history. In 1815, Napoleon Bonaparte gambled everything on one last battle, a clash that would decide not just the fate of France, but the balance of power in all of Europe. The place, a muddy ridge in Belgium. The opponents, the greatest general of his time against a coalition desperate to stop him once and for all. The world would soon know it as the Battle of Waterloo. The return from exile. It's February 1815, and Napoleon Bonaparte, once the master of Europe, is stranded on the tiny island of Elba. Just a year earlier, he had commanded empires, toppled kings, and terrified nations. Now his audience is goats and fishermen. The powers at the Congress of Vienna believe the Corsican monster is finished, but they underestimate him. In France, the new king, Louis XVIII, quickly proves unpopular. He reminds people of everything they hated about monarchy: arrogance, incompetence, and worst of all, he stops paying the soldiers. Letters begin pouring into Elba, whispering of unrest and loyalty still burning for the emperor. To Napoleon, the message is clear. France wants him back. On February 26th, under the cover of night, he boards a small ship, the Inconstant, with just 1,000 loyal men. For days they sail toward destiny. When he lands on French soil, the king's troops are ordered to stop him. At Grenoble, the moment comes. Two armies face each other, guns drawn. Napoleon steps forward, opens his coat, and calls out, "Here I am. Kill your emperor if you wish silence." Then one soldier lowers his weapon. Another shouts, "Vive l'Empereur!" In seconds, the entire regiment throws down their arms and rushes to his side. The impossible has happened. The king's army has defected to Napoleon. The march to Paris has begun. The 100 days begin Napoleon's gamble pays off. As he marches north, entire units sent to stop him melt away and join his ranks. In less than 3 weeks, the so-called fugitive is no longer a hunted man. He's a hero returning to his throne. On March 20th, he enters Paris unopposed, greeted by thunderous cheers. The Bourbon king, Louis XVIII, flees into the night. France belongs to Napoleon once again. But the celebration is short-lived. Across Europe, panic explodes. At the Congress of Vienna, the great powers drop their arguments with each other and unite in one cause. Napoleon must be destroyed. They brand him an outlaw, not a ruler, and vow to crush him once and for all. This time, they aren't holding back. Austria, Russia, Prussia, and Britain each pledge massive armies. In total, hundreds of thousands of men are preparing to march. The world's most powerful nations will not allow Napoleon a second chance. He has 100 days to prove them wrong. Napoleon's bold strategy. Back on the throne, Napoleon knows time isn't on his side. He quickly rallies an army of 124,000 men, veterans mixed with fresh recruits, hoping to match the massive forces gathering against him. But if he waits for the coalition to invade France, their combined strength will overwhelm him. The only option, strike first. His plan is as daring as it is risky. Two Allied armies are already stationed in Belgium. The British, led by Arthur Wellesley, the Duke of Wellington, and the Prussians, commanded by the seasoned Marshal Blücher. Together their numbers double Napoleon's. But for now, they're separated. If Napoleon moves fast, he can wedge his forces between them, crush each army before they unite, and force Europe to the negotiating table. It's a desperate gamble, but one perfectly suited to Napoleon's style: lightning speed, precision strikes, and sheer confidence in his own genius. On June 15th, 1815, he makes his move, marching his men across the Belgian border. The final campaign has begun. Battles of Ligny and Quatre Bras, June 16th, 1815. Napoleon strikes with speed. His army slams into the Prussians at the village of Ligny, and the battle turns brutal. Cannon fire shakes the ground, bayonets flash in the streets, and houses are ripped apart as soldiers fight room by room. By nightfall, the Prussians are shattered. 16,000 men lie dead or wounded. Marshal Blücher himself is nearly crushed when his horse goes down. But somehow the 72-year-old commander survives. Against his general's advice, he refuses to retreat far. He had promised Wellington he would stand by him, and he intends to keep that word. Meanwhile, Marshal Ney is sent to block Wellington at Quatre Bras. Ney outnumbers the British, but he hesitates. That hesitation proves costly. Wellington uses the time to fortify his position, holding the crossroads long enough to slip away under cover of darkness. The results are mixed. Napoleon has bloodied the Prussians at Ligny, but they are not destroyed. Ney has kept the British occupied, but he has failed to crush them. Still, Napoleon's strategy has worked, at least for now. The two Allied armies remain separated. The stage is set for the decisive clash to come. The eve of Waterloo. After the chaos of Ligny and Quatre Bras, the armies regroup. Napoleon believes the Prussians are broken, giving him the time he needs to finish off Wellington. But the Prussians are only battered, not beaten, and Blücher is already repositioning his men just miles away. On the night of June 17th, a massive thunderstorm sweeps across Belgium. Rain pours down in sheets, turning the rolling fields south of the village of Waterloo into a swamp of mud. Soldiers huddle in soaked uniforms, shivering as they wait for dawn. For Napoleon, it's a frustrating setback. He had wanted to attack early, but with the ground a sea of muck, moving artillery and cavalry is impossible. Wellington, meanwhile, seizes every precious hour. He arranges his troops along a ridge, positioning them in strong defensive lines. He turns 3 farmhouses into makeshift fortresses, Hougoumont on the right, La Haye-Sainte in the center, and Papelotte on the left, each garrisoned with elite troops. His army is a patchwork of Dutch, Belgians, German, and British soldiers, many inexperienced, but he knows terrain and timing may level the playing field. By dawn on June 18th, both sides are ready. Napoleon trusts his veterans and his reputation to carry the day. Wellington trusts the ridge, his fortified positions, and one more thing, that Blücher and the Prussians will arrive in time. For now, though, the British must stand alone. Clash at Waterloo, June 18th, 1815. The battlefield is still slick with mud, but Napoleon finally gives the order to attack. At 11 a.m., French cannons roar to life, shattering the morning silence. His first move is against Hougoumont, the farmhouse fortress on Wellington's right. Waves of French infantry storm its walls, expecting to overwhelm it quickly. But the defenders fight like demons, repelling assault after assault. What was meant to be a diversion becomes a bloody drain on Napoleon's forces. Undeterred, Napoleon shifts focus. At noon, he sends his troops toward the center, aiming for La Haye-Sainte. The French columns march forward in tight formation, shouting "Vive l'Empereur" as cannon fire and musket balls tear holes through their ranks. The fighting turns vicious, bayonets, fists, and sheer desperation. For a moment, it looks like the British line might collapse until Wellington unleashes his cavalry. British horsemen crash into the French infantry, scattering them in chaos. But victory turns to disaster. In their excitement, the cavalry charge too far, plunging straight into the range of French cannons. The thunder of artillery tears riders and horses apart. Then Napoleon's lancers sweep in, cutting down the survivors. With the cavalry gone, Wellington's infantry is dangerously exposed. Napoleon senses the tide shifting, until another blunder unfolds. Marshal Ney, misreading the British movements, believes he sees a retreat. Without waiting for orders, he launches a massive cavalry charge, 9,000 elite horsemen thundering uphill toward Wellington's ridge. But Wellington is ready. His infantry forms into hollow squares, bayonets pointing outward on all sides. The French cavalry surges forward, but the horses balk at the wall of steel. They circle helplessly, blasted by musket fire from every angle. Charge after charge crashes and breaks, until Ney's cavalry pulls back in tatters, achieving nothing but devastating losses. Napoleon's genius has brought him close to breaking the Allied line, but time is slipping away, and on the horizon, a new threat is approaching. The turning point. By late afternoon, the battlefield is soaked in blood. Napoleon finally captures La Haye-Sainte, punching a hole in the Allied center. French cannons are dragged forward and unleashed at close range. Wellington's line begins to buckle. For the first time that day, the British commander looks genuinely worried. If the French push harder, his army could collapse. But then Napoleon lifts his spyglass and sees the one thing he had dreaded: the Prussians. Against all odds, Blücher has rallied his battered army, and now they are charging toward the battlefield. The French detachment sent to stop them has failed. Napoleon knows he has only a narrow window, perhaps an hour, before he is trapped between two armies. Desperation sets in. He orders his most feared unit, the Imperial Guard, into action. These are the elite veterans of his empire, men who had never broken in battle. Their very name spreads fear across Europe. As they march uphill toward Wellington's position, French morale surges. years. Victory still seems possible, but Wellington has one last trick. Hidden in tall grass, 1,500 British troops lie in wait. As the Imperial Guard crest the ridge, expecting to find retreating enemies, a sudden command rings out. "Now, Maitland, now's your time." Muskets erupt in a devastating volley. The Guard reels under the onslaught, stunned and bloodied. A bayonet charge follows, shattering their ranks, and then the unthinkable happens. The Imperial Guard, the pride of Napoleon's army, turn and flee. For the first time in history, they run. That single moment breaks the spirit of the entire French army. Panic spreads like wildfire. Soldiers who had fought all day now abandon the field. Napoleon's empire is crumbling before his eyes. The aftermath. As the Imperial Guard scatters, the battlefield erupts. British, Belgian, Dutch, and German troops surge forward in a furious counterattack. From the east, Blücher's Prussians crash into Napoleon's flank. Surrounded and outnumbered, the French army disintegrates. Napoleon, once invincible, is forced to retreat. By nightfall, the coalition commanders, Wellington and Blücher, embrace on the field. Having accomplished the impossible, they have defeated the greatest general of their age. Napoleon flees back to Paris, clinging to the hope of raising another army. But the magic is gone. The defeat at Waterloo has shattered the myth of his invincibility, and even his supporters turn away. Within weeks, he abdicates for the second time. This time, there will be no easy exile on Elba. The Allies send him to the remote island of St. Helena in the South Atlantic, a windswept prison from which there will be no escape. For Napoleon, the dream is over. His reign, revived so dramatically just 100 days earlier, ends in total collapse. But for Europe, Waterloo marks the beginning of a new chapter. With Napoleon gone, peace settles over the continent for nearly a century, paving the way for industrial revolutions and the rise of new empires. The mud, blood, and thunder of Waterloo didn't just end one man's story. It reshaped the destiny of Europe itself. Conclusion. From the moment Napoleon stepped off that ship at Elba to the thunder of cannons at Waterloo, his final chapter was as dramatic as anything history has ever seen. In just 100 days, he rose from exile to reclaim an empire, only to watch it collapse in a single afternoon of mud, steel, and fire. Waterloo was more than the end of Napoleon. It was the battle that reshaped Europe, setting the stage for nearly a century of relative peace and an age of industrial progress that would transform the world. One man's ambition, one desperate gamble, forever altered the course of history. But here's the haunting question. What if Napoleon had won? Would Europe have fallen under his iron grip once again, or would an even greater storm have followed? Napoleon's rise and fall shows just how quickly fortunes can change, even for the most powerful man in the world. His story at Waterloo reminds us that history isn't just about battles. It's about gambles, risks, and the turning points that shape everything that comes after. If you enjoyed diving into this epic clash, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps more history fans discover the channel. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss our next deep dive into the shocking, untold moments that changed the world forever. After all, Waterloo wasn't the only time history was decided in a single day.